Cliff Vermilia, another key player in the creation of CATV, could not join us today, but I'm sure his name will be in our conversations frequently. To begin with, why don't we go over how the whole idea for CATV was arrived at and who came up with it, basically.
Well, the whole thing started in 1983 when the federal government passed a law that said it was all right for individual communities to franchise cable television. Mm-hmm. And so the town of Hanover at that point got a franchise agreement with Twin State Cable so that we started collecting a franchise fee way back in 1983, knowing that at some point in the future there would be access television. So way before we even put a committee together, we started collecting, I think it was 2% franchise fee in 1983.
Mm-hmm. So this is how the funding began?
This is how the kitty was grown. And in the interim, this money was collecting. We had a professional company come in and do a video for us on the history of Hanover, an oral history of Hanover, and some of the franchise fee for that. Then we did an architectural history of Hanover. Mm-hmm. And so we have those two tapes. But then the money kept coming in anticipation of starting an access station.
It was wonderful foresight, I think, on the part of the selectmen when they saw this opportunity to build for the future and see the chance of having an instrument that is so valuable to the community.
Right.
Well, actually, it was Cliff's idea because he had come from Connecticut where they had a cable station, an access station, and he said we should get in the ground floor when New Hampshire has this available because someday it will come to us. So it was Cliff's guidance that did
That's my recollection, is that first I was involved in it. It was Cliff Vermilia, who I really believe was the initiator of this formal process to get us to where we are. He and I had a conversation, I think it was in spring or summer of 1991, actually. And he said that he had this idea because this was something they had public access TV when he had been the town manager down in Bloomfield, Connecticut, as Willie has mentioned. And he said to me, "What do you think? And might this be something that the town and the schools might cooperate on? And can we begin to start some wheels turning here?" And I was very enthusiastic about it. And following Cliff's lead, we began contacting people who were already involved to some degree, and some who were not. But that was when we began to get it off the ground. Sometime in I think actually in the fall of '91 was the first time we had a meeting of a group of people.
Yeah, and I've got drawn into this because they offered a general invitation to people to come to a public access committee meeting to be held here in the library of Hanover High School. And there was a large group of people, and the director out there asked me if I would come and find out what was going on. And I came, and from that time on, I became so interested and involved in it that I stayed right along. It was a good meeting. I remember I have here a report that I wrote, and I said that it was a lively discussion, all manner of options and presentations by representatives of the Twin State Cable, and that was sort of got it off the ground.
Right, good.
The other key player in this from the very beginning was Carrie Clark, who's the Vice President of External Affairs at Dartmouth. So Dartmouth has been a key player right along.
How did you feel that a community access station would benefit the Dresden school district and community?
Well, there's no question that the concept was that by having access to public TV, we'd be able to get the basic message of the schools out to a greater degree than we were able to do through the print media. And of course, it opened up all kinds of possibilities for what is now happening: live programming and sports activities and the performing arts and all kinds of activities that students are engaged in that could be conveyed directly to the home, so that families who weren't able to be in attendance on the spot, as it were, could see it on TV. And of course, it's since flowed over into the live broadcasts of things like school board meetings and selectmen's meetings, and we do believe, based on the response that we get, has actually greatly enhanced the information availability and involvement of the people in the community, both in the schools and in the town. Willie can speak more to that than I, but we really do, we continue to be amazed at the numbers of people who say that they watch some of our activities, not only the school activities, but the board activities at home, and therefore become more personally involved. And it's been, in that regard, I think, a great asset to these communities.
One thing I'd like to add to that is the really distinguishing feature is that it's local. There's all sorts of TV going on, and one can look at all manner of things, but this belongs to the Upper Valley, to Hanover, Norwich, and Lebanon, and its character, its basic character, is it comes out of the community. And that's what really interested me.
Good. It took a few years to get CAT off the ground from the time that people first really focused on working on it. How did you get the wheels rolling? How did you get the rest of the fundraising done? And
Coercion.
Putting people over the head.
Meeting after meeting after
Meeting after meeting after meeting. It was-
There were weekly meetings for about a year and a half. It took a lot of pre-planning to get on the air. Different people did different jobs, but everybody was, without Joe and Cliff and Carrie and Jim, it never would have made it.
And Willie.
Well-
we were looking, we had goals that we had to find staff, we had to find space, we had to find equipment, and we needed, in addition to what the selectmen had set aside, in order to get started up,
We
to
needed
get
money.
going, we needed
money.
Needed money.
Right.
And so we set out to do that, to whatever sources we could get that might be interested. And startups is a good option. You come to people and say, look, this is going to be an important venture in a community. We need some help to start it up and get it going. And so that's what we did. But it took, we met, say, in January of '92, and it wasn't until April of '93.
May of
About a year and a half, almost a year and a half.
Yeah.
And along the way, we did a great deal of homework, not only individually, but in groups. I remember visiting places where they had a public access TV in place.
Yes.
Middlebury was one of the
Yes,
places
yeah,
we visited
yeah.
as a community, Burlington, and we had consultants come in from some of those places. We had to research what the laws were and put together bylaws and make sure that we were in conformance with those kinds of things. We went to other communities. We went to Lebanon, which at that point was not enthusiastic, frankly, about joining with us. I think there's some more enthusiasm in more recent times, but they weren't at the time. We went to Hartford. They weren't particularly interested. So it really became driven by Hanover, and then we did, of course, get support from the Norwich community as well initially, and we had a lot of people, and that's what it really took. People from the college, people from these communities, people from the various governing bodies, and just plain volunteers like Dr. Armstrong, who were willing to put in the time and effort to get the message out that this is what we wanted to do, that it could be done, and we needed some help. And we got the help.
good.
We had to do things like form a corporation, get a tax number. All these things all this legal gobbledygook just takes months to write up, get
Our
approved.
501c3, for example,
Yeah,
took, almost a year?
almost a year to get it. So there was lots of preparation, and it wasn't always smooth sailing.
Right. So not everyone exactly welcomed the idea.
And we didn't always strike gold.
Right.
And we didn't always agree on everything.
Had some resistance.
Yeah.
But I think that in the end, it would seem to me that it was the concept that sold itself, the idea that here was an opportunity, as Dr. Armstrong said, for us to be local, for us to focus on some local activities and to get local word out and to have local involvement in the production, which is very, as you are evidence of, was very much a part and parcel to it. I was trying to remember, if you don't mind my interjecting my own question, I can't remember, in addition to the initial fee that we were, what do we call it? It was put onto the Twin State Cable bill.
Franchise fee.
Franchise fee. I can't remember how much money and where we got it from. We did get some grant money.
Yes, we got some grant money.
For startup money, which I think Dr. Armstrong was largely responsible for.
There are two things that happened from my point of view. One was an opportunity to become a part of the community. And for any volunteer who came and joined up with this was a way to come into the community, learn about the community, and be part of the community.
Right.
The other thing was that you brought whatever talents you had and whatever connections you had, and you brought them to the CATV 6. So we were able. I think we were successful in a number of very good ways, and we had one really disastrous event when we tried to go to Washington, and we got caught in the bureaucracy. We put enormous amounts of energy into something called the Public Telecommunication Facilities Program of the National Telecommunications and Information Administration of the Department of Commerce. Well, you knew you were in trouble if you had a
title like that.
A title like that. We tried very hard, but that one we did not succeed in. Others we were quite successful. And now with your new corporators, with the corporations, it looks to me, you all know much more than I do of how it is going at the moment. But that's what we needed to do.
Right.
So Jim was, aside from the franchise money, Jim was the one who was responsible and brought in most of the other money. But this only worked because school boards, select boards,
Yeah.
superintendents, town managers, and the college were willing to work together. And it's probably one of the best examples of how a town draws all their resources together for a common goal, and it worked.
Right.
Yeah.
How was the original board for CATV set up?
I just happen to have all the names
good.
here. Isn't that wonderful? I have a computer and I have a disc that says public access television. So I plugged it in to see what it would produce, and it produced the Dresden Access Television. Is what it was originally, DATV 6. And there was a Joseph Delabadia and a Robert Franzoni and a Clifford Vermilia and a Carrie Clark and a Deborah McLean Carter and a Richard Stucker and a Marilyn Black and a Stephen Rossoff and a Michael Bain and a Jim Armstrong and a Wayne Weiner. Those are there's your...
But if you go through that, you find representatives of the school board, representatives of the select board of Hanover and Norwich, representatives of the Montshire Museum and Hitchcock and the college. And that's the way we started, was people representing the major
I should have
institutions.
given
of the Upper
their
Valley.
attribution because I have it down here, and you're quite right.
Right,
But
representing.
the way that list of that original board was generated, as I recall, was somewhat arbitrary. We had those of us who had been working on getting this concept off the ground. Actually, I think we did hold a meeting, and we did hold an election, but the meeting was largely us.
Sort of like a train running through, but it worked.
Yeah, and it was good because it did work well. I mean, there aren't very many of those names, if any, that are still on the board, and that's fine. That's the way it should be. We got it off the ground, we got it running, and then it was time for a change. And those of us who had been involved in the birth, if you will, backed away and let some other folks take it on, and it's been changing and evolving ever since. So the process worked. But initially, it was those of us who had been doing the legwork took on the responsibility. And I think through that first year, we drove it, and then we began to back away from it.
So, you had mentioned that the name for CATV has changed. Were there any other names?
I think those are the two names, DATV 6 and then CATV. We moved, if I remember correctly, that we felt that Dresden Access Television wasn't a wide enough angle of vision. What we wanted to do was say that this station really was a community station, wide-angled. And so we wanted to have the name conform to what the aspirations were.
Right.
Is that?
That's about right. Yeah, I
And
think
then, of course, you had to change all your names through the corporation, through the taxing, and
Right. But then the options would be open for other
but the options are then
Correct.
open to
Exactly right.
expand or
we didn't want to limit it to
just
the
Dresden.
Dresden concept, which sounds like only Hanover and Norwich, and we really did want it to be community in the broader sense.
Yeah. Do I remember correctly that there were some representatives on the board that by virtue of their office, that is, there was someone to be there from the selectmen, there was somebody to be there from the Hanover school world, and then there were some at-large
At-large.
people.
Yeah, there were some
there were some designated seats. And
permanent seats.
Yeah,
then there were some at-large
yeah,
seats.
permanent seats and some at-large seats. So
And I
you've
think
got
that still exists.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sure it does.
Those seats are filled by other individuals, but
Yeah.
there were, I think, 5 permanent seats, and then there were several other,
Well, it's easy to name them. There's a Dartmouth College seat,
Yeah,
superintendent seat,
Yeah.
the school seat, town manager
town
seat,
manager seat.
school, Dresden School Board, Norwich Selectmen and Hanover Selectmen.
That's it.
And then the other members of the 15 were at large.
elected at large.
You said you had gone to visit some of the other cable access channels of other towns, and did any specific station stand out to you that you modeled CATV after, or was it pretty much just your own creation?
The one I remember most was Middlebury.
We're probably closer to Middlebury than any other of the other stations.
Right.
They were very helpful in presenting a model and also alerting us to the pitfalls
Yeah.
of what was involved, because there are some, and there were some, and there remain some pitfalls of public, meaning just that, public, and then you really can't you can't exercise censorship, and you can't have a lot of constraints and restraints. And I remember being struck by that when we were in Middlebury. I said, wow, that's something we have to think about.
Right.
And we did spend some considerable time thinking through. I think we came to a view that anything that was bona fide within our area, that is in our towns, that would be presented. And then we could have some choice with regard to when others programs would be presented.
Yes, when was important.
When was very
Not what, but when.
That meant, yeah.
So we reserved the right, if we felt something was not appropriate, we would say, well, it'll go on at, 2:30 Sunday morning, which limits the audience.
Yes.
There really haven't been problems on that score.
No.
No.
We had a lot of
We haven't had a lot of
good
problems.
technical help from the people in Burlington.
Yeah.
Yes.
In terms, we got all set up and we were on the air and found out that what we were using to program was really the dinosaur of technology. And Burlington was very helpful in getting us set up with a computerized programmer so that you didn't have to be here every time a new tape went on.
Where did you get your equipment in the beginning, for the most part?
You're not probably the people to ask. Maybe nobody knows, but I know that my
We
friend Zoni knows.
we had a technical committee as part of all of this, and they got the equipment.
Okay. When you were at Middlebury, was there a TV station there, community access? There wasn't?
No, and there wasn't snowmaking either. That's when I was there. Now you can't have a skier. So, no, it wasn't.
Okay.
Yeah.
What, one of the technical problems we wrestled with then and are still wrestling with, quite frankly, is the difference between live TV and tape delay. And so much of what we do is very valuable, but it is on a delay. And I remember some technical difficulties we had with Twin State Cable initially, because we wanted to have live drops so that we could broadcast live not only in Hanover but also across the river in Norwich. And there were what turned out to be insurmountable technical problems with that, and they've not been resolved to this day. But that was something that we have continued. I think the board has continued to wrestle with, because, and of course, you can't have everything live. There just isn't enough room. We don't have enough channel space to do that. But that continues to be an issue. There are some things which people can view as they happen, and other things that they just have to wait an hour or a day or 2 days till they can actually see it on TV.
The underside of that, Joe, is though that we can see things twice. That is, it can be shown several times.
That's true.
And so if you miss it, you miss the book program, which I've been wanting to see, it'll come up again. You see, so it's a backside of it, but I know that's what you're saying. Yeah.
But we had to do things like set up training programs for volunteers on how to use the equipment, and there's still technical problems. I taped a show this week and came back with beautiful pictures and no sound.
Oh, dear.
So, all the stuff is done, all the shooting is done by volunteers. This is something people have to realize, that the people who do the actual production work here are not paid. They're volunteers, and sometimes we don't perform to the best of abilities.
We do. I think we started with, and I think we still have, just 2 paid employees. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
That hasn't changed. Is that 2? And that's so. we could talk about cost efficiencies there. We're getting, I'm sure, more than our money's worth out of the two employees. But as Willie says, the real guts, if you will, of the programming comes from people who are just interested and do volunteer their time.
Now that CATV is off the ground, do you find that fundraising is harder than when it was just an idea, or maybe easier?
Getting
do
the
it?
grant money is harder because
Yes.
people are very willing to give for startup, but they don't
That's-
want to do for continuing operation.
That's right.
We have in place now what we call as corporate sponsorships,
Mhm.
where local businesses are helping to support us, and that's been a very successful program. And that helps balance the budget. Franchise fees alone don't pay for the operation of the studio. If you look around the room, it's full of wires and cameras and all these things, and these are not your camcorder pickup at your local hobby store. This is expensive equipment to buy and to maintain.
Right.
So it costs something to run a station.
I remember when we were interviewing for staff, Joe, it was one occasion that I recall in particular where we were interviewing a person who was a candidate to be the director, and there was some sort of an alarm, you remember, in the Hanover building, and the fire bells all went off. We all had to go outside, and that brings back a memory of a long series. We did a lot of interviewing, building or designing this space that we're in, to carve it out and out of the space in the high school, and then to utilize it in the way it's been. All took a
Well, it took some knocking out walls and putting
Yeah.
new windows and doors in, and it was not done overnight. Again, it was good cooperation between the schools and CATV to allow this to happen.
We even managed to get some, a piece of the cost of that funded by the state, because this is in fact a part of the school building, and technically could be used for instructional purposes. So the state kicked in as though it were added classrooms, and one of these days it may have to be. In fact,
Well, in a way, it is a classroom. if
well, it
students
is.
come
Yes,
in and
that's a good
use it.
point. Yes.
We have Richmond school students coming in for regular classes, so it is a classroom.
What are your views on the future of CATV with possibly other communities joining it?
I'm not sure. I haven't been in the loop recently. I do, the information I'm getting is that there seems to be a greater receptivity in the part of some other communities, more willingness to take some active part, and thereby one would hope assist with the funding. That's always critical. But I can't speak to that specifically. Willie, do you know any more?
It's been sort of a bumpy year as we've tried to regionalize and bring other communities in. Lebanon and Enfield put articles on their warrant to ask the voters whether they would be willing to pay a franchise fee, and both of them said no. I'm not sure that's the way to go politically. And although the general public is in favor of it, the Lebanon voters were in favor of it. They didn't want to pay for it. Well, sure. That's all well and good. Nobody ever wants to pay for anything, but I think in time we'll get all the Upper Valley communities on.
That would be my sense, that it is such a valuable means of communicating within these communities that they will come eventually to want to be part of this.
I think they will.
I'm optimistic about it.
Good.
I'm very optimistic. It may not be this year, but
Yeah.
in the future, I think there's a role for every community in access.
There's no question that when I think back to those early days of our first discussions, we were never really sure that it was actually going to fly. And so that May date, whatever it was in 1993, when we actually went on the air, was literally giving birth.
Right.
And we all stood back and said, "Wow, we did it!" And it's been uphill really ever since. I mean, it's been a tough battle. It has been uphill, but it continues to go. And I share the optimism. I think it's something that the more the longer CATV is in existence, the more likely it is that it will continue to be in existence and expand its impact throughout the Upper Valley.
Right, it's progressed along the way.
Well, the idea has internal life. It has such a capacity to interest people and to be useful that I just can't believe that a community of this kind isn't going to have
Right.
this now that it's going.
Good. Well, I'd like to thank you all for being here today. I'd like to also thank, on behalf of CATV, the communities of Hanover and Norwich for all of their support in getting CATV off the ground, and especially you people here today for all of your effort and patience in starting CATV. It's a long, hard process, and thank you very much.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
To win the World Series, to be there.
Of course, it's ballpark.
Of course, in a ballpark, right? They couldn't. Cleveland.
Right.
They couldn't sign Fernandez. They couldn't sign Clemens. They lost out a couple other major free agents. What's situation? Experts tell. What's the situation in Cleveland? Why can't they sign any major free agents?
Do they want to?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
Okay.
Do they want to
Their
spend the money?
salary
They want to save the money for some other time.
Yeah.
I mean, they got plenty of other stud muffins.
But they made bids for these people. They couldn't get.
Yeah, well, they were Red Sox bids for Clemens too, but they had a limit. You know, Indians.
I question too how badly the Indians felt that they had solved their major need when they made the trade and got Matt Williams before the free agency started. That gave them the third baseman, it gave them the cleanup hitter, it cushioned the loss of Albert Bell.